President Cyril Ramaphosa and other African heads of state are in Kiev. This is ahead of their meetings with President Vladimir Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Zelensky also told reporters that Ukraine was greatly helping African nations with food security and setting up grain hubs on the continent with our partners, accusing Russia of using hunger and social instability as a tool of political pressure. The African leaders are not idiots, and they know exactly who's behind you, my friend Zelensky. I guarantee you that. And listen to this thing right here. There's obviously some deliberate misinformation, I'm quoting, being spread here. And quote, Ramaphosa's spokesman Vincent Magwenya said later told South African media, adding that the delegation didn't hear any explosions or see any out of the ordinary.
The president arrived in Kiev safely by train, along with other heads of states and government who were part of the African leaders' peace mission to Ukraine and Russia.
Africa's delegation, led by the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is on a peace mission to both Russia and Ukraine. You could all bear with me that the Russia-Ukraine war has had an adverse impact on the global market, and Africa is not an exception. It is in this light that the president of South Africa is leading a delegation of African leaders to hold peace talks between Ukraine president and that of the president of Russia. Now, the president of South Africa and his delegation have already arrived in Ukraine and have held talks with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. After that meeting, he will be heading towards Russia, where he's going to meet the president of Russia, that is Vladimir Putin, so that he holds peace talks with him as well. Now, the position of the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, has been very strict and rigid. Almost all peace missions that have been to him has proved futile. Will this one be an exception, or this will also be added to the numerous peace missions that were unsuccessful? Let's watch the next video and see what unfolds.
Flexibility to African leaders. Ukraine's leaders has again rejected the offer to mediate an end to the conflict because they want the only thing their way. And well, that means you don't want to negotiate. Ukrainian, I hate when these guys say Ukrainian president. I would say president of Ukraine, that's how I would introduce this guy. Zelensky brushed off the African Union peace initiative on Friday, insisting there can be no negotiations with Russia. Then why did you bother to visit? I tell you why. Because all these guys here, they were invited to the show to visit this location, that location, so they say, oh, Russians bad, we good. The high-ranking delegation, led by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, visited Kiev and is headed to Moscow next. And I'm quoting, I said clearly and many times during our meeting today that allowing any talks with Russia while the occupiers are still on our land means freezing the conflict, the pain and the suffering. End quote, Zelensky said at a press conference afterward. According to Zelensky, Russia, and I'm quoting, deceived the world for years with the Minsk process and is trying to do so again. For peace to happen, he argued, and I'm quoting, Russian troops need to leave our entire independent territory. So you can move in and kill all the Russians in the eastern territories. That's not going to happen. You tried to do this since 2015 until 2022. The Kiev, whomever was in charge over there. So I don't think they will allow that to happen. The Franco-German proposal Ukraine had agreed to in 2015, that's the Minsk agreements, was supposed to bring peace in the Donbass. Meanwhile, the UN has failed to unblock the export of Russian food and fertilizer to Africa, which used to account for a far greater share of the continent's needs. Remember, this is Russia today. So obviously they're gonna make their point of view known. So, the African Union mission got off to an inauspicious start in Warsaw, where Polish authorities held up Ramaphosa's security deal, while in Kiev on Friday the visitors were reportedly told to take shelter from incoming, and I'm quoting, Russian missiles. Ukrainian authorities later claim to have shot down 6 Russian hypersonic rockets.
The president of Ukraine is holding on and refusing to negotiate and bring an end to this war. Countries like Brazil, China, India, Hungary, Vatican, and the rest have all been on this peace mission to negotiate with the president of Ukraine, but he still holds on to his stance. There comes my question. Was it really necessary for African leaders to also go there on this peace mission? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let's continue watching.
This obviously comes from Russia Today and is from June 16, 2023. Zelensky offers zero flexibility to African leaders. Ukraine's leaders has again rejected the offer to mediate an end to the conflict. The same thing they did with the Chinese, with the Indians, with the Philippines, with the Vatican, with the Hungarians, with everybody. Why? With Brazil, because they want the only thing their way. And, well, that means you don't want to negotiate.
Well, let's bring in SABC News correspondent Dasha Chernyshova, perhaps for more on this. Dasha's location is, in fact, in Moscow. Dasha, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC in South Africa. Walk us through what the latest is emerging in terms of news coming in. There were reports suggesting that Russia, in fact, had fired cruise missiles at Kiev. Can we confirm the source of this and whether it is true or not?
Well, as we understand, the air raid sirens were indeed on in Kiev, but Moscow didn't comment on any of those strikes. Moscow once again says it is hitting the military infrastructure of Ukraine. But indeed, the delegation of the African leaders will be received in Russia on Saturday. They will be coming to Russia's second largest city of St. Petersburg. And according to Russia's presidential aide, Yuri Ushakov, the delegation will indeed be discussing everything in the meetings on Saturday. We don't know whether Russia has received any documents with the peace proposals. Moscow says they will be discussing everything in person, but indeed we understand that this is a peace mission and the sides are to talk about the de-escalation measures for the Ukrainian conflict. Moscow has never ruled out that this initiative could not be successful, so the understanding that there are many issues on the table as well. Moscow says they will be talking about the grain deal, and this is, according to Moscow, what is worrying the African nations. But at the same time, Moscow has been saying that it does not intend to extend the grain deal, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, beyond the July 17th, because Moscow says nothing has been done to implement the provisions of this grain deal when it comes to the export of the Russian agricultural goods to the international markets. We also understand that the sides will be talking about the possibility of the Russian President Vladimir Putin participating in the BRICS summit in South Africa in August because of the ICC arrest warrant for the Russian president. Russia's foreign ministry has said earlier that they do expect the South African side to make sure that the Russian president has the immunity from that. But all in all, Moscow has been saying that Africa is a very important partner of Russia. The ties have been strengthening. There have been several delegations of Russian officials to Africa over the course of the past year. Moscow says that Africa is under increased pressure from the Western countries, particularly the United States, but thanks African countries for their neutral approach when it comes to this conflict in Ukraine.
Dasha, just very quickly, we obviously understand at this point media and protectors of President Cyril Ramaphosa remain stuck in Poland. Are they going to make it in time for the coverage of these peace talks? What's also emerging on that front as we speak?
Well, we understand that Cyril Ramaphosa is indeed in Kiev at the moment. That's according to the media reports. And we understand that the delegation will then be going to Poland and then traveling to St. Petersburg for these peace negotiations with the Russian president. But indeed, the situation is difficult. It is the time when the special military operation of Russia is underway in Ukraine. And certainly that complicates the logistics and the traveling between the two countries.
When all is said and done, will Africa's peace mission bring any significant resolution to the Russian-Ukraine war? Let's wait as time unfolds. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, just locate the subscribe button down there. Click on the subscribe button. Click as well on the notification bell. And I'll see you in the next video.